My friends, the battle is over. Pokrovsk has fallen into Russian hands. I mean, just look at the map. It's GG. Well played. The Ukrainian army is holding on to the last parts of Pokrovsk with their fingernails. The Ukrainian army has effectively been evicted from the city. Russian patrols have been geolocated at every corner of the urban area. There is barely any Ukrainian resistance to be reported. Here you can see a Russian rifle team calmly walking through the northeastern outskirts of the city. And that was the last Ukrainian holdout. As you can see, Pokrovsk is effectively under Russian control. It's over. Before, after. And check out what this Ukrainian soldier from the 68th Jaeger Brigade admitted to Ukrainian TV channel Kyiv 24.
Дійсно фіксується ворог, практично у всіх, скажімо так, уже майже у всіх кварталах та районах міста.
It's a disaster. Oh no, actually everything is fine. Because 3 Ukrainian soldiers infiltrated enemy lines and raised their banners on the ruins of the Pokrovsk City Council building. That's it, Ukraine is won, the city is liberated.
We are winning!
This is exactly what Zelensky advised in Chapter 1. When your army faces a desertion crisis, sacrifice your best men for a pointless mission. But you know what, that's not even the worst for our beloved Ukrainskaya Armia. If we zoom out of Pokrovsk, countless Ukrainian troops are now trapped in Mirnorhad or deep inside this cauldron, from where there's literally no escape.
All hope is failing, my lord!
It's bad, it's really bad. These Ukrainian soldiers have just been abandoned by their commanders. My friends, we're approaching the nightmare scenario. Now, to avoid a complete disaster, and in some sort of desperate move, Ukrainian special forces were landed with helicopters to reinforce the Pokrovsk garrison. Everything is just collapsing so fast. So in this video, we'll go through what happened in detail, day by day, and see what could happen next. Welcome to History Legends. Here are the latest news of the Russo-Ukraine war. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to support my work, make sure to turn off ad block or check out my Patreon or PayPal to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped and welcome to the headquarters. Let's jump right in. Reminder, whatever you see as gray on this map is actually red, Russian-controlled territory. This was the approximate frontline situation around Pokrovsk a week ago on the 27th of October. By the end of the day, Russian patrols were spotted across the entire city. Due to Ukrainian resistance on the flanks, namely in the towns of Udachny and Rodynske, Russian forces were not able to achieve this great encirclement. In turn, they're closing the claws on the city itself, just like they did in Bakhmut and Avdiivka. I laid out the operational situation we're witnessing right now in the video I posted on the 4th of July, because Ukraine will then redirect its reserves to hold the flanks. Every additional step for the Russians is going to be more and more costly. This is where the center will start giving in. Russian forces are only 4 kilometers away from the first houses of Pokrovsk. That's where we'll see a street by street, block by block urban battle until the pocket gets reduced. 28th of October. That day, Deep State UA greatly increased Russian-controlled territory over Pokrovsk. Russian detachments infiltrated further into the northwestern edge of the city, where they even planted their flag. However, they didn't pick any location for their trolling. They planted their banner on the Pokrovsk sign at the entrance of the city. Yeah, things are really going well. Not far from there, a Ukrainian soldier was ambushed by a Russian patrol, who then looted his supplies because, even in Ukraine, FPS rules still apply. You drop, they shop. Due to all these Russian infiltrations, Ukrainian soldiers were trapped inside their own citadel. Meanwhile, Russian storm detachments also expanded their area of control eastward along the railroad. As you can see in this video, it's not entire squads that are on the move, but individual soldiers, stealthy moving from one building to another. This denies Ukrainian recon drones a masked thermal target, and thus makes it harder for them to guide FPV drones to strike enemy movement. We already covered this topic last year during the Battle of Donetsk. Essentially, instead of bringing troops forward using big bulky armored vehicles, The Russians are pushing continuously with small assault groups composed of up to 7 infantrymen. That's how they clear one building after another. For example, here you can see a fire team of 4 to 5 Russian riflemen infiltrating the entire urban area, creeping their way forward from one house to another. This time, it's an even smaller unit, 3 men. As you can imagine, this makes Ukrainian drones ineffective, since these assault units are so hard to spot. What's interesting is that the Russian command of the 2nd Command Arms Army attacked Pokrovsk head-on without using a single armored vehicle. Quite a feat of arms. However, to support these riflemen forward, they also dispatched drone operators. In this video, geolocated in the high-rise building district, the drone slowly gets closer to the window until it gets picked up by the operator. The proximity of these drone teams allow the advancing columns to benefit from extra reconnaissance, and thus pinpoint the exact location of enemy units. At the same time, the Russian 51st Command Arms Army continued pushing into Mirnorhad from the east. From this coal mine we mentioned last video, advanced elements secured a foothold inside the eastern entrance along the TO504 road. Also on the 28th of October, a Russian AFV drove along this tree line and tried penetrating into the high-rise district. But then the moment it tried passing the arch, bingo, it struck a mine. However, the Ukrainians then edited the footage in such a way that we don't really understand what happened next. Using this Russian footage, we see that after being immobilized, an entire rifle team exits the vehicle. And then we see the 6-man assault unit taking this high-rise building by storm. It's only some time later that the Russian AFV was actually destroyed by multiple drone strikes. Russian units of the 5th DPR Brigade also made considerable progress in the southern outskirts of Mirnorhad. Overall, with the Russian 2nd Armies taking Pokrovsk head-on, we can observe a large sweeping movement against Mirnorhad from the east by the Russian 51st Army. At the same time, in the bulge northeast of Pokrovsk, Ukrainian drones targeted Russian infantry deep inside the village of Volodymyrivka. This means the settlement is effectively under Russian control. And as you can see, Deep State is still coping big time. At the same time, Russian Marines started occupying these tree lines 2 kilometers east of the first houses of Shakhove. That's because the previous day, the Russian command launched another mechanized assault composed of 24 armored vehicles and tanks against that village. They pushed through minefields, a very dense artillery barrage, and then faced multiple waves of FPV drones. And that's only when they were halted. As a result of this storm of steel, 15 vehicles were destroyed or abandoned along the road. But clearly this wasn't a complete fiasco either, as portrayed by some other analysts. Because by the 28th of October, Russian infantry teams were now advancing along these tree lines towards Shakhove. 29th of October. Early on the 29th, Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence launched a spectacular helicopter air assault against Pokrovsk, where they disembarked a dozen operators right on the contact line. If you're interested, I made an entire video about it. Link will be in the description below. In summary, even if we only have footage of one Black Hawk dropping off troops, we know that at least 2 UH-60 participated in this mission, maybe even 3. That would mean this helicopter air assault dropped off an entire platoon of HUR operators. According to me, their mission was to clear the northern part of Pokrovsk in order to hold the door for as many Ukrainian detachments to retreat out of the cauldron. To me, that's the only reason that could justify such a risky operation. Okay, sir, we got off the drop zone. When are we getting reinforcements? You are the reinforcements. And it's very possible Ukrainian artillery bombarded this industrial complex near the drop zone in order to pin down enemy forces and to cover the noise of the Black Hawks. But again, this is speculation. The reason behind this desperate air assault was because the general staff of the AFU could simply not stop the Russians from making progress in Pokrovsk. Here you can see a Ukrainian drone powerlessly observing yet another Russian infantryman near the railroad. This was recorded right at the center of Pokrovsk. It's in this exact sector that the Russians secured a bridgehead to storm the northern part of the citadel. Simultaneously, they were also trying to create a second bridgehead northwards in this direction. We know this because of the following video, a binom taking position inside this building. Clearly, this is not your regular Sturm infantry. Look at their huge backpacks. They could be carrying food, water, and ammo for multiple days. Who knows, sleeping bags or even perhaps drones and relay antennas. I don't know, these backpacks are really huge. Maybe they do steal washing machines after all. On the 3D map, we can clearly see that these two Russian soldiers took hold of this position. And from there, the second echelon can spread into the neighboring streets. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians were very salty at the flag the Russians planted the previous day. So they carried a drone strike to take it down. But notice this had to be done using a drone, and not infantry. Zero aura was gained by doing this. To be fair, Deep State UA responded by saying, if you send a soldier from the nearest position, first of all, it will reveal the position and it will be taken apart. Secondly, the soldier will die because a Russian FPV drone might hit him. The price of a drone cannot be compared to the life of a Ukrainian warrior. Yeah, on the surface that's true. In reality, that's a big cope. There's so many examples of Ukrainian forces forcefully removing Russian flags and raising their own banners. But this time they didn't do it because there wasn't a single Ukrainian infantry team in proximity of this sign. Nobody's left. If they did, they wouldn't risk Black Hawk helicopters and special forces operators and drop them off right next to the sign. Okay, anyway. In this next post, Deep State also showed all the latest geolocations of Russian forces in Pokrovsk. It's actually disastrous. In the post, they reported, the enemy is trying to maintain the pace of infiltration, sending groups of at least 5 to 6 people, sometimes even 10. A lot of Russian infantry has infiltrated the city, and some have even tried to enter Hryshine. From all the drone footage that was released, we mostly saw 2-man teams on the move, rarely more. Now perhaps they spread out, move in binomes, but always as part of larger units, that's also possible. And yeah, Deep State also revealed that the Russians tried to enter Hryshine. That's really bad, because Ukraine is about to lose access to this vital supply line. The only communication lines that will remain are across open fields. And with mud season quickly approaching, Deep State continued, the enemy is trying as much as possible not to engage in battle, but simply to move and accumulate. This actually makes a lot of sense. Without boots on the ground and actual physical control of the urban area, Russian infantry units can just bypass and isolate enemy strongpoints. They don't even need to storm their positions like in Bakhmut. Just encircle them. Then Deep State revealed something very interesting. In the northern part, the defense forces conducted a gradual clearing of the streets. The Russians shared this over the radio among themselves and simply started moving to the neighboring street. You see? What did I tell you? This is exactly why all these HUR operators were landed north of Pokrovsk. The AFU needed assault detachments to clear the sector from enemy elements. The type of mission that could justify the use of helicopters, and not the silly rumor that it was meant to evacuate NATO or Azov officers. I don't even know where the story comes from, it's completely made up. Deep State ended by saying, after the clearing was completed, the monkeys again crawled into their hideouts on the same street. So if we put all the pieces from the puzzle together, from my understanding, Ukraine Special Forces mopped up the sector, but then eventually they left. Of course, you're not going to use elite soldiers to hold the ground, and it seems there were no other Ukrainian rifle teams available to rotate them out, and to actually guard the sector. So just like in a hide-and-seek game, the Russians crawled out of their hiding spots and simply returned. Once again, this goes to show that you cannot only rely on drones to defend cities. It doesn't work. As the AFU was losing control of Pokrovsk, on the eastern side of the map, a 4-man Russian storm detachment was spotted advancing into Mirnohrad. This means they were geolocated 400 meters beyond the contact line. It's important to note that at the same time, other Russian units were flanking Mirnohrad from the north, but overall Ukrainian defense more or less held in this area. However, the same could not be said of the southern part of Mirnohrad. As you can see, the Russian army secured a foothold 1,200 meters long by 200 meters deep. The progression of the 5th Brigade of the DPR was only halted by this industrial complex. Remember in my last video when I said the AFU would obviously withdraw all its forces from the southern part of the cauldron? Well, guess what? They didn't. Because this is pure Zelensky doctrine. If you face encirclement on 3 sides, look at the exit and charge the opposite way. That's when the Ukrainian command decided to launch a counterattack to repulse the Russians out of the neighborhood. In this video, we can see a Ukrainian 4-man assault element pushing into this house. But suddenly, they receive fire. 2 men down. The 2 others quickly run outside. But seconds later, fire comes from all directions, and they're both KIA. What a waste! What a waste! Mind you, this is the 29th of October, and the Pokrovsk cauldron is about to be sealed off. There's no point in launching such counterattacks. Just take everyone out of there. This is the Dunkirk moment. Time for evacuation. Nope. Let's sacrifice an entire assault team for a pointless position.
Madness. Madness and stupidity.
And then the general staff of the AFU is like, why do we have so many deserters? 30th of October. That day we saw large territorial changes. We could observe that the AFU had essentially lost control over the entire southern part of Pokrovsk. Deep State also expanded the gray zone all the way to Novopavlivka, which the Russians already claimed to have captured on the 15th of October. Meanwhile, in Mirnohrad, Deep State was obliged to show Russian progress towards the industrial complex. Ukrainian forces were starting to give in. Take a look at that. There are only 4 kilometers between these 2 Russian groupings. This means all Ukrainian forces positioned at the bottom of the cauldron are about to be completely trapped. And it's not as if the AFU had no time to withdraw these guys. We've been talking about the Pokrovsk cauldron for weeks. Weeks! Oh no, it's okay, let's just sacrifice more Mobics, more special forces. These poor guys, I don't know how many are left, but they're a couple days away of being completely encircled, either by incompetence or complete disregard for human life.
Son of a...
It reminds me of this story from Avdiivka. The OGs will remember, but here's the clip. He said on an Instagram post that there were 2 breakout attempts. The first one on the night of February 14th. A first group of 10 men in his unit went out, but because of the artillery shelling, only 3 wounded made it back. 2 by themselves during the night, and the third one was evacuated later in the day by 4 volunteers, including our friend Max Charbina, who got himself injured during the rescue mission. The following night, on February 15th, it was now or never. All the squads of the company exited one by one. They had to cross 1 kilometer in open ground under heavy enemy shelling. All along the way, in the middle of the night, Max had to jump over his fallen comrades that were less lucky than him. Everyone escaped, except for the last group of 6 wounded soldiers left in the bunker. Max heard on the radio questions about when the medevac will be coming for them. The commander replied, "No one is coming, leave them behind." But the commander did not know that he was talking to these same wounded soldiers, and thus sealing their fate. So that was the story of the breakout from the Zenit air defense base. So while the AFU was clinging on to the cauldron for more PR points, the Russian command deployed more and more reinforcements towards Pokrovsk. In this footage, we can see the drone operators of the Ukrainian 68th Yega Brigade targeting Russian motorcyclists and infantry aboard buggies. But again, not a single armored vehicle or tank. The Russians essentially raw-dogged this assault using light infantry alone. At the end of the footage, we see an FPV drone strike on a house and a Russian soldier that survived the blast, jumping out of the building. This strike took place at the end of this hamlet called Rih. It's located on the eastern edge of Pokrovsk, and not far from there, another Russian soldier was targeted right next to a bus stop. All of a sudden, Ukrainian drones targeted enemy forces at the extreme northern edge of Pokrovsk. Russian assault detachments were swarming the western side of the citadel, the eastern side as well, and now they were shoving their tip all the way north. 31st of October. By the 31st, the Russian 2nd Combined Arms Army gained full control over the E50 road going through Pokrovsk. As the Russians kept advancing, all the Ukrainians could do was to send bomber drones to inflict as many casualties as possible. But if you compile all these drone strikes, the actual number of losses they inflicted on the Russians in Pokrovsk is relatively low. They're totally powerless. At that moment, a key battle was taking place in the town of Rodynske, located 7 kilometers north of Pokrovsk. In my previous video, we already established how the Russians had secured the southeastern part of the town. Since then, there was a lot of back and forth in this direction. Here's some drone footage of the neighborhood both sides are fighting so hard for, about 8 dozen commie blocks. All of a sudden, one of these buildings detonated after being targeted by a Ukrainian GBU-62 JDAM-ER. And not even 70 meters from there, a Russian rifleman was targeted by a Ukrainian drone. The Ukrainian command clearly tries to lock the Russians in this corner of the town. Hold on, you know what? Perhaps the objective of the AFU is to push the Russians out of Rodynske, then charge southwards through Krasny Liman, and link up with the Ukrainian garrison of Mirnorad. That way, even if Pokrovsk falls, all the Ukrainian soldiers stuck in Mirnorad will finally have a way out. November 1st. The next day, chaos continued in Rodynske. Russian artillery unleashed an impressive barrage against the town, more specifically, the northern part of the settlement. This also indicated the area was still under control of the AFU. Further south, the Russian breachhead into North Pokrovsk had also expanded. Soon enough, the 68th Jaeger Brigade targeted enemy units 800 meters beyond the train station. Meanwhile, the second echelon of the Russian army started mopping up the rear areas, going house by house, making sure there were no enemy elements left behind. November 1st was also particularly foggy. This bad weather was a blessing for Ukrainian forces, because it was terrible for Russian drones. This allowed numerous Ukrainian units to slip out unnoticed from the cauldron. But not everyone was lucky. Here you can see a fiber optics drone navigating in this weather with a limited visibility. Suddenly it spots 2 Ukrainian soldiers. At first, they worry, but then realize it's okay, it's a friendly drone. Whoops, oh no, actually it's hostile. Just like they tell US cops, whenever in doubt, just shoot. In this first-person shooter experience, 2 Ukrainian soldiers tried to hide from enemy UAVs. You can hear one FPV drone after another buzzing above their heads and then hitting the house. Seconds later, you can hear Russian artillery shells dropping nearby. What's interesting is that unlike what we see in Ukrainian propaganda videos, not every drone strike is a hit. It would be very interesting to get the data of how many FPV drones you need to hit one target in an urban area. It actually looks very hard. Maybe we're at 10 FPV drones for one hit, maybe 20, 30, I don't know. This soldier from the 155th Mechanized Brigade said that the moment one of their positions is discovered, the enemy will throw 15 FPV drones there, an FAB will definitely fly there, and artillery and mortars will work on it. This is exactly what we just saw. November 2nd. Russian artillery pummeled Rodynske once again, this time the center of the town. These artillery strikes have been going on for a couple of days now, without forgetting about numerous FAB bombs, of course.
I want a tree-line bomb!
I don't know if this is a preparation for a Russian assault, or just preemptive strikes. For example, Russian drones that detected Ukrainian concentration of forces that could counterattack. Further south in Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian 68th Jaeger continued striking Russian soldiers in the northern parts of the city. Here you can see the drone slowly creeping its way towards its target, with Russian soldiers inside the house, and then comes the strike. The drone goes in for decay, but crashes against the wall. More dramatically, this drone strike was geolocated right here, in an area not even marked as part of the gray zone. It's so over. The AFU now lost the northwestern part of the city. This means the Ukrainian army only retained effective control over the northeastern corner of Pokrovsk. That represents less than 10% of the urban area. GG, well played. Pokrovsk has fallen. Let's be honest, it's over. And reminder, there's still entire Ukrainian units stuck at the bottom of the cauldron. And you know what? It's gonna be very cynical. We're not even talking about some random territorial defense battalions, but veterans from the Ukrainian 25th Airborne and 38th Marine Brigades. These are the guys that are stuck. What a waste. The only hope is walking 15 kilometers under enemy fire, or somehow find vehicles to zigzag at all speed across open field out of this bucket. In this footage alone, I counted a dozen Ukrainian vehicles immobilized by Russian fiber optics drones. You know, I really don't understand what the General Staff of the AFU is trying to achieve there. In this article from the 5th of November, we learn Ukraine has made a military political decision to hold the Pokrovsk-Mirnorad agglomeration for as long as possible. To this end, all available reserves will be transferred to the area. That explains why the General Staff deployed entire teams of operators of Ukraine's 3rd SSO in the northeastern part of the city. According to the footage, progression looks difficult. 3rd of November. In the morning, a Russian assault team calmly walked along the northeastern outskirts of the city. You can spot the multi-top gas station and the grain silos near the intersection. This means that the Pokrovsk machine building plant, the APC Invest feed mill, and practically the entire northern part of the city have been completely cleared of Ukrainian forces. Just like I showed you in the introduction, this is what a Ukrainian soldier from the 68th Yega Brigade admitted to Ukrainian TV channel Kyiv 24.
Дійсно фіксується ворог, практично у всіх, скажімо так, уже майже у всіх кварталах та районах міста.
And because of that, many Ukrainian units are now effectively isolated. In Pokrovsk, there are still groups of Ukrainian soldiers stuck behind enemy lines. And according to this pro-Russian mapper, we can clearly witness how potentially hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers could be trapped within Pokrovsk proper. I don't even have words for this. This is a debacle. Meanwhile, in Mirnohrad, Russian forces of the 5th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade of the DPR advanced 1,000 meters and are now behind the industrial area. Even that stronghold has now fallen. As you can see in this video, Russian rifle teams are advancing almost without opposition, clearing one house after another. November 4th. Like a tidal wave, Russian forces kept advancing. That day, Ukraine's Skala regiment spotted numerous Russian riflemen in the northwestern tip of the city before immediately striking them. Meanwhile, at the northeastern edge of Pokrovsk, near the gas station we just saw, more and more Russian storm detachments charged into the last Ukrainian holdouts. Many positions were overwhelmed, and this Ukrainian soldier, all alone, preferred to surrender to the attacking force. By the end of November 4th, virtually all of Pokrovsk was under Russian control. Whoops, the next day an assault team by Skala pulled an impressive stunt. They infiltrated Russian lines and planted their flag on the city council building. No, it doesn't mean Ukrainian forces actually counterattacked all the way to the center. It's just yet another pointless PR stunt, sacrificing the lives of some of Ukraine's best soldiers. In conclusion, we're witnessing one of the worst defeats of the AFU since the beginning of the war. Russian forces effectively stormed Pokrovsk with the infantry alone, that infiltrated through the gaps caused by Ukraine's shortage of manpower. All of a sudden, many Ukrainian units found themselves encircled. But now, with the fall of Pokrovsk, this means we're days away from the complete encirclement of Mirnohrad and its garrison. Was it worth it? The General Staff of the AFU had weeks to pull out its forces from this cauldron. Pro-Ukrainian accounts are already saying Pokrovsk was not even strategic anyway. Then why is Ukraine sacrificing entire brigades for it? This is a real military disaster for Ukraine. Their only hope is a counterattack from Rodynske towards the north of Mirnohrad. Otherwise, it's GG well played. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of this analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description below.